by the time Carter's silver Bentley rolled to the curb at 4th and Pike. Seattle rain had found every seam in my coat. I stood under a broken bus shelter with one cardboard box, a dead phone, and $23 in my wallet. Less than an hour earlier, I had been chief financial officer of Pierce Urban Group. I had an office on the 32nd floor, a salary that made my mother proud, and a husband who told business magazines that I was the reason he succeeded. Then, that husband had security escort me out of our company. The Bentley's rear window lowered. Carter Shaw looked at me from the warm leather back seat. He was 62, silver-haired, and dressed as though the rain had been scheduled around him. "Get in, Evelyn," he said. "Nolan just reported you for stealing $4.8 million. I stared at him. Carter added, "And he made one mistake." That was when I understood my life had not collapsed by accident. Someone had taken it apart. The people holding the tools were my husband, Nolan Pierce, and my best friend, Sabrina Vale. I climbed into the Bentley. 12 hours earlier, I had woken beside Nolan in our penthouse overlooking Elliott Bay. He kissed my forehead, said he loved me, and asked whether I would be home for dinner. That memory bothered me later. Not because the kiss meant anything, but because he delivered it so naturally. A good liar does not always look nervous. Sometimes he looks exactly like the person you married. At 8:30 that morning, I found a red folder on my desk. It came from Dana Lee, our junior controller. She had circled 3 payments to a consulting company called 4th Pike Holdings. Together, the payments totaled $4.8 million. All 3 carried my electronic approval. I had approved none of them. One payment was processed while I was in Chicago. Another went through while I was under anesthesia for minor surgery. The last was approved at 3:14 that morning, while Nolan had supposedly been sleeping beside me. Dana closed my office door. "The vendor address is a mailbox in Wyoming," she said. "The tax number belongs to a dissolved company." "Who created the vendor?" "The system says you did." She quickly added, "I know you didn't." Before I could answer, Nolan entered with Sabrina and 2 security guards. Sabrina had been my closest friend since college. I had hired her as head of public relations when the company was small. She knew the code to my apartment, the name of my first dog, and the tea I drank when I could not sleep. She had also been sleeping with my husband for 18 months. I did not know that yet. That morning, she wore a sad expression and would not meet my eyes. "Nolan placed a termination notice on my desk," he said. "The board had found evidence that I created false vendors and diverted company money." I laughed because the accusation was absurd. Nobody else laughed. I asked to call our attorney. Nolan reminded me that the company attorney represented the company, not me. I reached for my phone. One guard stepped closer. Nolan said, "Please don't make this harder than it needs to be." For 16 years, I had made his life easier. I built the financial systems that turned his father's struggling construction business into one of Washington's largest private developers. I negotiated loans, saved projects, and worked through holidays while Nolan attended charity dinners and accepted praise. Now he looked at me like a problem he had solved. I turned to Sabrina. "Tell him I found those payments this morning." Her lips trembled. Then she said, "Evie, we all saw the records." That was when I knew she was part of it. Security took my badge, laptop, and phone. Nolan let me pack one box. I took a framed photograph of my late mother and the brass calculator she had used in her neighborhood bookkeeping shop. As I left, Nolan leaned close. "Sign the separation agreement," he whispered. "Take the money and disappear before this becomes criminal," I said. "You already made it criminal." His right eye twitched. That tiny movement was the first honest thing I saw from him all day. Outside, my personal credit card was declined. My bank app would not open. The manager of our building said Nolan had reported my keycard stolen. A police detective left a message asking me to come in for questions. Within 40 minutes, Nolan had removed my job, money, home, and reputation. The company released a statement saying I was on leave during an internal investigation. Sabrina had written it. I walked without knowing where I was going until Carter found me. He had co-founded the company with Nolan's father, Richard Pierce. Carter later sold most of his shares, but he kept a board seat and a small ownership stake. He and Nolan disliked each other in the careful way wealthy men do. They smiled in public and kept knives under the table. The Bentley carried us to a quiet apartment on Queen Anne Hill. Carter placed an envelope in front of me. Inside was an access log showing my digital certificate had been copied to a second computer 6 months earlier. The second computer belonged to Nolan. How did you get this? I asked. I hired an outside cybersecurity firm after I noticed irregularities. You investigated Nolan without warning me. I didn't know he would move today. But Carter was not helping from kindness. Men like him did not send Bentleys into storms because they suddenly discovered a conscience. What do you need? I asked. He smiled slightly. There you are. I wondered how long grief would hide the accountant. He believed the $4.8 million was bait. Nolan had moved far more through construction loans, pension accounts, and land deals. In 12 days, the board would vote on a $40 million credit line. Carter wanted proof before then. And what do you get? I asked. He hesitated. That was answer enough. He wanted Nolan removed so he could buy back control cheaply. I won't help one thief replace another. I stood. Carter said the apartment was mine for 12 days. A clean laptop waited in the desk. $5,000 was in the kitchen drawer. Why? I asked. Because Nolan thinks you need him to survive. I stayed. Not because I trusted Carter. Because someone had finally handed me a weapon I understood. Numbers. Part TW. That night, I wrote 3 names on a legal pad. Nolan Pierce. Sabrina Vale. 4th Pike Holdings. Then I wrote one question. Why frame me now? People do not destroy a useful person without a reason. I knew every loan investor. And weakness in Pierce Urban Group. Nolan had depended on me. Something had changed. At 2 a.m, I found it. 3 months earlier. I had blocked a $19 million land purchase in Tacoma. The property had been appraised at $11 million. Nolan became furious, then apologized with flowers and a weekend away. I had thought the argument ended. It had only moved underground. The seller was Blue Heron Capital. Blue Heron belonged to a Nevada company managed by Martin Vale, Sabrina's older brother. If the sale had closed, Pierce Urban Group would have overpaid by $8 million. The money could have returned to Nolan and Sabrina through their private companies. 4th Pike Holdings used the same registered agent. The companies were connected. At 6 a.m, someone knocked 3 times. Only Carter knew where I was. I looked through the peephole and saw Dana, soaked and frightened. She held up a flash drive. After I was escorted out, Nolan ordered the accounting department to delete the vendor review files. Dana copied them first. She also copied an email from Sabrina to Nolan. It said, E will sign when she sees the revised appraisal. If she refuses again, we move to the contingency plan. E meant me. The contingency plan had begun. I asked Dana why she took the risk. 3 years ago, I made a tax error, she said. You fixed it and never told anyone my name. That was my job. No. Protecting me was a choice. Loyalty is strange. 100 grand gestures can buy nothing. One quiet act of mercy can grow roots. Dana helped me trace 7 false vendors. Together, they received more than $9 million. The last company was Cedar Rain Consulting. Its listed owner was Helen Cross, my mother. She had been dead for 5 years. I swept a coffee cup from the table. It broke against the wall. Using her name was not needed for the fraud. Nolan had done it because he knew what it would do to me when I found it. It was a message. Nothing you love is safe from me. I cleaned the cup, opened the files, and followed the money. Cedar Rain Consulting received $1.2 million. After passing through 3 banks, it reached a trust connected to a waterfront condominium Sabrina had bought the previous year. She told me an aunt left her the money. I had helped her choose the curtains. At 9, Carter arrived. I showed him everything. "This is enough to stop the credit line," he said. "No. Nolan will blame Martin and say he acted alone. We need the original transfer instructions and the device that copied my certificate." Carter looked impatient. "Think like someone under attack." As if the building wanted to prove him right, the lights went out. A service door opened. Footsteps crossed the kitchen. A man in a dark hood ran toward the desk. He was not after me. He was after the laptop. I stepped into his path and struck his wrist with my mother's brass calculator. He shoved me into the wall, tore free from Carter, and escaped with the computer. The struggle lasted less than 15 seconds. Carter's hand was bleeding. "All our work was on that machine," he said. "No." I lifted the cardboard box and removed Dana's flash drive. The laptop was a copy. The building camera caught a tattoo on the intruder's wrist. Dana recognized it from a company photograph. The man was Luis Garza, Nolan's personal driver. Now we knew Nolan was not only hiding fraud, he was hunting evidence. Carter wanted to confront him. I refused. Nolan think Luis succeeded. Before Carter arrived, I had placed a fake spreadsheet on the stolen laptop. It said I planned to meet a federal investigator at noon the next day. Carter frowned. "There is no federal investigator. Not yet." I called Naomi Blake, a corporate fraud attorney I trusted. She once told me that the first person to report a crime often controls the shape of the investigation. Naomi listened and gave me an address. The next morning, I entered a federal office building through an underground garage. By noon, the fake meeting had become real. By 2, Nolan knew about it. He texted Carter's phone. "Come home, Evie. We can fix this privately." A second message followed. "I still love you." I almost laughed. Nolan did not love me. He loved the version of me that solved problems, protected secrets, and made him look brilliant. Now I had become the problem. And for the first time in our marriage, he had no idea how I planned to solve myself. Part Tar Yi, the investigators did not arrest Nolan that day. Real cases move slowly. They wanted timelines, bank records, witnesses, and proof that could survive expensive defense attorneys. Nami helped me prepare a whistleblower statement. Dana supplied the deleted files. Carter supplied the cybersecurity report. I supplied the map. Every payment, every approval, every lie. But the numbers still bothered me. $9 million had gone to false vendors. The Tacoma deal would have produced $8 million more. That was serious. But it did not explain why Nolan needed a $40 million credit line. Taking $40 million at once would destroy the company and guarantee attention. The money had another purpose. Pierce Urban Group managed retirement funds for several construction unions. Those accounts were supposed to remain separate and conservatively invested. The latest reports showed perfect monthly growth. Too perfect. Honest numbers move. False numbers often stand at attention. Dana checked the original bank statements. $27 million was missing. The proposed credit line was not meant to be stolen immediately. Nolan planned to use it to refill the pension accounts before the annual audit. After the audit, he could move the money again. The $4.8 million was bait. I was the planned criminal. The loan was the planned cover. When I told Carter, he went still. Those pensions were Richard's promise, he said. Nolan's father had started as a union carpenter. He created the program because he remembered watching older workers leave job sites with damaged bodies and almost no savings. For a moment, Carter's anger looked genuine. Then I noticed a document on the table. It was a draft purchase agreement. Carter's company, Shaw Capital, would buy Pierce Urban Group's best waterfront properties if the company defaulted. The price was less than half their value. How long have you been preparing this? I asked. 6 months, the same length of time he had suspected Nolan. You knew the company was being hollowed out. I suspected. You could have warned the pension trustees. I needed proof. You needed the default. Carter's jaw tightened. Nolan stole the money. And you saw smoke, locked the exits, and waited for the building price to drop. Then I understood why he found me so quickly. He had been waiting. My destruction made me useful. I would expose Nolan, trigger a default, and clear the path for Carter's purchase. I photographed the agreement. Carter stepped closer. Do not do something emotional. Men like Carter use that word whenever a woman stopped cooperating. I am doing what I always do, I said. Following the money. I left the apartment. Naomi placed me in a hotel under another name. The board meeting was 9 days away. Then Nolan changed the story. A photograph of me entering the federal building appeared online beneath the headline, Diced Recede CFOC case I am human TY. Sabrina went on television, wearing pearl earrings I had given her. She said the company was heartbroken by my betrayal. When a reporter asked whether she and Nolan had become involved, she looked down and paused perfectly. She said they had grown close while supporting each other through the crisis. Within an hour, I was no longer only an accused thief. I was the bitter wife attacking her husband because he had found love. Nolan filed for divorce that afternoon and asked a judge to block me from our marital accounts. For one terrible hour, their performance worked. I sat on the hotel bathroom floor reading comments from strangers. Some called me greedy. Some called me jealous. Some said Nolan looked too kind to be guilty. A public lie does not need to convince everyone. It only needs to exhaust the truth. Naomi took the phone from me. They are winning, I said. No, they are performing. It feels the same. It is not. Performance needs an audience. Evidence needs a judge. Then, she told me about an anonymous package delivered to investigators. Inside was a real pension statement and an audio recording. Nolan's voice said, once the 40 clears, the union accounts look whole, Evie takes the vendor fall, and Carter buys the story. Sabrina asked, what happens to Evie? Nolan answered, she signs, leaves the state, and starts over. She always lands on her feet. The package included a note. You are looking at the wrong theft. Ask who owns Harbor Ledger. Harbor Ledger built the software used to generate pension reports. Public filings led through 2 trusts to Shaw Capital. Carter owned it. Maybe Nolan used the software without him. Or maybe Carter knew much more than he admitted. The recording had to come from someone close to Nolan. I thought about the people who entered his office without appointments. His assistant, Claire Morgan, had worked for him 7 years. She scheduled every private meeting and was treated like furniture. I called her from a secure number. I received the package, I said. After a long silence, she whispered, he is going to destroy the pension records after the board meeting. Can you prove it? I can prove everything. Why help me? My father retires from Local 194 next year. Claire had recorded Nolan after finding pension documents on his desk. She also had calendar entries showing secret meetings between Nolan and Carter. They were not enemies in this scheme. They were partners planning to betray each other later. Nolan used Carter's software to hide the missing money. Carter allowed the company to approach default so he could buy its assets cheaply. I was supposed to carry the criminal blame until both men reached safety. Sabrina got money and Nolan. Louise removed evidence. Everyone had a reward, except me. I had a cardboard box and a ruined name. Naomi asked what I wanted. I want them at the board meeting, I said. All of them. And then? I want them to believe they won. Part AUR. The annual board meeting took place in the Cascade Hotel ballroom overlooking downtown Seattle. It was also an investor presentation, charity dinner, and celebration of the company's 30th anniversary. Nolan refused to cancel because canceling would look weak. He also believed I had no evidence. The stolen laptop contained incomplete spreadsheets and the fake federal meeting. Nolan thought Louise had taken my only copy. Carter thought investigators were focused only on Nolan. Sabrina thought the public already hated me. Each knew one part of the truth. None knew the plan. For 8 days, I stayed out of sight. Dana and Claire preserved records requested by investigators. Naomi coordinated with pension trustees, lenders, and federal agents. I met 3 independent board members and showed them enough to become cautious without revealing our timing. Then I met union representatives. A retired ironworker named Samuel Ortega placed an old photograph on the table. It showed him standing on a steel beam high above the city. "My knees are gone," he said. "My wife has cancer. That pension is not a number." He was right. For years, I had called the accounts balances and obligations. To Samuel, the money was medicine, rent, and a promise that 30 years of dangerous work meant he would not become a burden to his children. "Bring it back," he said. That became my goal. Not revenge. Restoration. Revenge still came. It simply arrived as a result. On the morning of the meeting, Nolan called. "Evie, this has gone far enough. You framed me for a federal crime." I panicked. "For 18 months. He blamed Sabrina. Then offered me $5 million and a condominium if I admitted acting alone. "And the pension money?" I asked. Silence. Then his voice hardened. "You think Carter will protect you. He used you." "I know." That surprised him. "Come to the hotel tonight," he said. "We can still control this. You and me. The way it was before." There had been a time when those words could reach me. But he did not want me back. He wanted the woman who protected him from consequences. "She is gone," I said. "Who?" "The wife you could lie to." That evening, the ballroom glittered with glass, gold light, and expensive confidence. Nolan stood at the podium in a black tuxedo. Sabrina sat in front wearing silver. Carter occupied a seat near the board. I entered 10 minutes before the vote on the credit line. Conversation stopped in waves. I wore a dark blue suit and my mother's gold pin. Sabrina saw me first. Her face turned white. Nolan smiled for the room. "My wife is clearly going through a difficult time," he said into the microphone. "Please respect her privacy." He turned my arrival into another performance. I walked down the center aisle. "I am not here for privacy," I said. "I am here for the vote." Security moved toward me. Independent board member Joyce Bell stood. "Let her speak." I faced the board. "The statement in front of you is false. The union pension accounts are short $27 million. The proposed credit line is intended to hide the shortage before the audit." The room erupted. Nolan raised his hands. "These are accusations from a terminated employee facing prosecution." Dana pressed a key at the control table. The screen showed real bank statements beside the false reports. Month by month, account by account. Nolan ordered security to stop the presentation. Joyce told them not to move. I showed the false vendors emails and registrations. Then Nolan's recorded voice filled the ballroom. Once the 40 clears, the union accounts look whole, Evie takes the vendor fall, and Carter buys the story. Every face turned toward Carter. He stood slowly. This recording is incomplete and illegally obtained. Naomi entered the aisle with 2 federal agents behind her. Its admissibility will be addressed in court, she said. I displayed Carter's purchase agreement and Harbor Ledger ownership records. I explained how his software produced the false reports and how his company planned to buy assets after default. Carter looked at me. You have no idea what you are destroying. A business built on stolen retirement money. Without a buyer, lenders take everything. Thousands lose work. That is what you counted on. Nolan pointed at Carter. This was his system. He planned it. Sabrina stared at Nolan. You said Carter would protect us. That sentence was not in our evidence. It was better. The room went silent. Nolan ordered her to sit down. She finally understood he planned to blame her. Then she began talking. She described the shell companies, Tacoma property, and transfers. She said Nolan kept the copied certificate device in a safe inside his wine room. Agents were already searching the house. Carter moved toward a side door. An agent stopped him. Nolan looked at me with hatred. You think this makes you innocent? You signed those reports. I signed reports generated from records your people changed. You were CFO. You were responsible. Part of that was true. I had trusted systems I built and explanations from people I loved. I was responsible for missing it, I said. That is why I am staying to repair it. Nolan laughed. The company is insolvent. Then the union representatives and 2 lending banks entered. For 8 days. Naomi and I had negotiated a rescue agreement. The lenders would freeze Nolan's loan, extend current debt, and place the company under independent supervision. The board would remove every executive connected to the fraud. Carter's purchase option would be rejected because he hid a conflict. Recovered property, frozen accounts, insurance, and future profits would restore the pensions. It was not perfect. But the company did not need Carter's rescue. It needed the thieves removed. The board voted unanimously to remove Nolan as chief executive. Carter lost his board seat. Sabrina was terminated. Joyce nominated me as interim restructuring officer. I declined. Nolan looked relieved, as though my refusal proved I only wanted revenge. I took the microphone. For 16 years, this company used my work and Nolan's name. Putting me in his chair will not fix the system that allowed this. I recommended Dana as interim chief financial officer under an independent monitor. I recommended union representation on the audit committee and public quarterly recovery reports. The board approved all 3. Nolan watched the company continue without him. That was when he understood his punishment. He believed he was the center of everything. Then the room voted, and the world kept moving. Par 5, the arrests came 3 days later. Nolan was charged with fraud, conspiracy, identity theft, and crimes connected to the pension accounts. Carter faced conspiracy and fraud charges. Louise accepted a deal and testified. Martin Vale was arrested in Nevada. Sabrina surrendered through her attorney. The newspapers changed their headlines. Some apologized. Most moved on. My name was cleared in court filings. But clearing a name is not the same as repairing a life. People remembered the accusation after forgetting the correction. For a while, I became angry whenever someone searched my face before shaking my hand. Then I realized I could spend my life begging strangers to remember the right version of me. Or I could stop living as a headline. The divorce took 11 months. Nolan fought over furniture. He had never chosen an art he had never noticed. He even claimed I damaged his career. Naomi read that sentence aloud, removed her glasses, and stared at the wall until we both laughed. I kept my mother's calculator, my savings, and a Portland condominium Nolan once offered as payment for my silence. I sold the condominium and started Cross Ledger, a forensic accounting firm focused on employee benefits, nonprofit funds, and whistleblower cases. Dana stayed at Pierce Urban Group to stabilize the company. Claire became operations director. Samuel Ortega became the first employee representative on the pension committee. Within 18 months, recovered assets, insurance, and profits restored $22 million. The remaining $5 million went into a scheduled recovery plan. It was not a perfect ending. Perfect endings belong in press releases. Real justice comes in payments, hearings, signatures, and long afternoons when honest people repair what dishonest people broke in minutes. Before his trial, Carter asked to meet. We sat in Naomi's conference room. Without his Bentley driver and boardroom, he looked smaller. He said he wanted to explain. Explanations are free, I told him. Forgiveness is not part of the meeting. Carter admitted he discovered signs of Nolan's fraud. Almost a year before I was fired. He believed he could control it. He planned to let Nolan expose himself, then take the company back. Richard would have hated what his son became. Carter said, Richard would have hated what you became too. He accepted that. Then he slid an envelope across the table. Inside was the deed to the Queen Anne building, where I began the investigation. He wanted to give it to Cross Ledger. I pushed it back. I do not need another gift with a hook. There is no hook. There is always a hook. Carter looked down. Then sell it and put the money into the pensions. That made me pause. I asked why he had really called me. Because when you found my purchase agreement, you looked at me the way Richard did the last time we spoke. What did he say? He said, I measured every decision by what I could own afterward. Carter gave a tired smile. I spent 20 years proving him right. I did not forgive him. Forgiveness is not a receipt someone earns with one honest statement. But the Recovery Trust accepted the building. Its sale returned another $3.1 million to the pensions. Nolan's trial began the following spring. I testified for 2 days. His attorney tried to turn our marriage into the center of the case. He asked whether I had been jealous of Sabrina. Yes. Whether I hated Nolan. For a time. Whether I wanted revenge. I wanted the records read correctly. The attorney smiled as though I avoided the question. So I added, the fact that the truth hurt him was not something I needed to arrange. Nolan was convicted on every major count. At sentencing, workers spoke about delayed retirements, medical fear, and the humiliation of learning their savings had been used like casino chips. Sabrina received less time because she cooperated. Before prison, she wrote me a letter. She said Nolan made her feel chosen. She said, every lie became easier after the first. She envied me because people trusted my competence, while she believed they valued only her charm. Then she wrote, I took your husband because I thought taking something from you would make me more like you. I read it once and placed it in a drawer. Her confession explained her. It did not excuse her. Months later, I visited my mother's grave with the brass calculator. As a child, I sat in the back of her bookkeeping shop and listened to its keys click. She believed numbers told stories, but only when someone brave enough asked what had been left out. I built my career on that lesson. Somehow, I had forgotten to use it in my own life. I told her I was sorry Nolan used her name. The wind moved through the cedar trees. For the first time, Cedar Rain Consulting did not make me furious. It was only a false company now. My mother's real name belonged to the life she lived, not the crime they attached to it. 2 years after the night in the rain, Pierce Urban Group made the final pension recovery payment. The company held a small event in the same ballroom where Nolan had been removed. There were no cameras or expensive speeches. Only workers, trustees, accountants, and coffee in paper cups. Samuel handed me a statement showing the restored balance. "Numbers look right?" he asked. I checked the total. "They do." He nodded toward the room. "Then tell them." I stood in front without a prepared speech. I said the money was back. People applauded. That was all. And it was enough. Afterward, I walked through downtown Seattle. Rain began near Pike Street. For a moment, I was under the broken shelter again with my cardboard box, believing everything important had been taken. A silver car stopped at the light. It was not Carter's Bentley, just an ordinary sedan reflecting the gray sky. The light changed, and it drove away. I did not need anyone to open a door. I had my own office, my own keys, and my own name. Nolan believed destroying my reputation would make his crime invisible. Sabrina believed stealing my life would give her its value. Carter believed every disaster was an asset waiting to be purchased. They were wrong for the same reason. They thought what I had built existed outside me. In a marriage, in a company, in an apartment above the water. But the most valuable thing I had built was the woman who knew how to begin again. They left me in the rain because they thought I had nowhere to go. They never understood that the storm was where I learned which way the wind was blowing.